Ladies and gentlemen, there's no better way to get up in the morning than to get up with Garret. Garret is a third-generation success credentialed real estate entrepreneur who is here to give you tips, tricks, and share stories of success. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Garret Bedroom.
All right, Dougie Bricks.
How are
Thank
you?
you. Good to see you. I feel like I
You
saw
too.
you only 6 hours ago.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming over to Salons by JC.
Yeah.
Did you get a haircut by any chance or no? A little beard trim?
Yeah, a little beard trim.
Not bad.
I was already looking a little fresh, but yeah, got a little fresher.
You were looking good, right? Hey, everybody. I appreciate you waking up this morning and joining us on our show live from Bergen County, New Jersey. And today we actually have a very special in-studio guest. Ladies and gentlemen, say hi to my good friend, Bergen County Commissioner Ramon Hache.
How are you? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ramon's going to be joining us today, and we're going to be talking a little bit about his involvement in real estate in Ridgewood, New Jersey, where our family owns some real estate in Bergen County, and some of his background in wealth management. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about some things that we both enjoy, like wrestling and kids sports, and of course, giving back to the community and being involved in faith and things like that. But when we're talking fresh, let's start out talking about my fresh kicks. I got a picture of my new fresh kicks I just picked up
over
the weekend.
Here they come.
Any Jordan fans here, check out the private room in Westwood. Shout out to my friends over there. And I'm catching Dougie off guard. I'm ready to go. I'm just killing it with the kicks.
Oh my God, it's giving me difficulties. What is this? Hold on.
We lost our kicks. All right.
Kicks are coming. Well, why don't you tell me where you got them?
I told you we got them in Westwood, New Jersey. We got them, but we can come back. We were at the private room. We can start with something else. I was going to kind of bring in the kicks and then talk about the slap. But we can stay with the kicks. Are you a sneakerhead, Ramon? You like
yeah,
Jordans?
I do.
You
I do
like,
have. I'm a shoe guy.
You're a shoe
I
guy?
I have a lot of probably a broad collection of shoes. You'd be surprised.
It's crazy what goes on with the kind of sneaker community. I mean, some of these kids think they're gonna quit their jobs and make $1 million
right.
buying and selling sneakers, but it's kind of unrealistic, I feel. Yeah, it's I've been collecting Jordans. I mean, I had them all when I was little, and I don't know. My parents, I guess, got me 3 or 4 different pairs, and I remember hearing about like crazy violence on the streets, and there were all these things, kids getting hurt for sneakers.
Yeah, for sneakers, yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I think I'm done with this. I'm not looking to fall on the sword for fashion. That's not something I'm real interested in. Then I kind of fell out of love with it for a little bit, got into other stuff. You get suits and nicer clothing, of course. But, what's old is new. These things come back, and Nike's re-released a lot of different colorways. And, of course, Jordan, the value of the Jordan brand is still a $1 billion type of business, right?
Yeah, and the fashion trends have changed as well. I mean, years ago, you would never think to wear a custom, made suit with sneakers. And now you almost don't want to wear it with shoes.
Yeah, I mean, I wear sneakers now. It may not be the business meeting with the bank, but for a lot of other meetings, I mean, a nice pair of Jordans with a sport jacket and a dress shirt and jeans is kind of a cool style. So, all right. So while Doug's looking for the pictures, we'll come back to the Jordans. No big deal. Let's talk a little bit about your background, right? You were born in the DR, right?
Dominican Republic. That's right.
And I know you're a few years older than me, and you moved to Brooklyn first, and then ended up in Ridgewood.
Yes. So I moved to the United States at the age of 9, and at the time, my parents were living in Brooklyn, New York, and so we moved there. It was a great community, great background, great experience. So as you can imagine, moving from the Dominican Republic to Brooklyn was a completely different experience. Moving from Brooklyn to Ridgewood was like landing on the moon. It was a very special place because it was very different from any previous experience that I had.
Sure. Did you play stickball in Brooklyn? Because I always hear about kids playing stickball on the streets of Brooklyn.
A lot of wiffle ball, stickball. It was a great time. It really was.
That's awesome. And then, so how did your parents figure out Ridgewood? Where did that come from? Because it's a small community. I mean,
it's a small community, but you'd be surprised. I talk to people from other states, from within New Jersey. Everybody knows where Ridgewood is. It's a very well-known place. But we had some relatives who had lived in town
You had some friends.
And we
Okay.
had visited and knew that it was a great community, and obviously the schools are great. So my parents made the decision at the time to move to Ridgewood.
Absolutely. And so you grew up here. You went to high school, Ridgewood High School,
right.
which is really cool, beautiful school, great community. And then you got into wealth management. Was one of your first entrepreneurial kind of
Yep.
type
So
of positions? Yep.
so out of college, I ended up working with the big banks.
Okay.
And within the environment of the big banks, I carved out this. I started originally working with the institutional side of the business.
Okay.
I had worked with one of the big trading firms on Wall Street, and within there was an opportunity to get into the private banking or wealth management.
Awesome.
And it was the best decision I ever made.
Did that for a while, right?
Yep.
And is that the kind of position where you can control your own hours and kind of you're on the road a little bit, meeting clients and?
I don't know if you could control your own hours.
You know?
I think it's look, it was and it was catering to the ultra high net worth clients in Latin America.
Sure.
So there's a lot of travel
Well,
involved.
a lot of travel, yeah.
There was still at a time when people were not very comfortable having conversations about wealth because of security reasons.
Absolutely.
Think about it. In Latin America,
Right.
The very wealthy families, are very low profile about
Of course, you have to
the
be.
amount of money they have. So
You constantly hear stories of people being kidnapped and things and ransom and
a lot.
This
a lot.
happens. This is real.
And even some of my colleagues who I work with had been kidnapped. And
Oh my goodness.
so it's serious.
Gotcha.
But it was a lot of travel. I traveled all over.
That's great.
And I would say, at one point in time, I was covering the Americas. So I was traveling from Canada down to the tip of Argentina, from New York all the way to San Diego, and everything in between.
Incredible.
Yeah, great experience.
All right. So instead of setting your own hours, it's definitely, I guess where I was going was that's the type of position that you're not kind of attached to a desk inside all the time. You're outside, you're meeting clients, you're on the road, you're networking, you're going to events. Right. It's a very entrepreneurial type of
Very
lifestyle.
entrepreneurial.
You have to manage yourself to hit your numbers.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a clientele that has a lot of different interests. They're big supporters of the arts. They do a lot of development locally. They do a lot of financing through international banks. So you do have to get plugged into all the different aspects of their lives,
of course,
in order to be really a trusted advisor and be relevant to them.
And you got to be available too, right?
Available,
I mean,
absolutely.
I always say one of the best things I felt about Eli Manning over the years, I'm a big Giant fan, was he was always available, right? He didn't miss any games, never. He just got back up. And you look at like a Cal Ripken, you compare professional sports. Part of being a successful business person long term is being available, right? So when your boss says, hey, there's this opportunity for you to step up and I need you to take on this assignment, you know what? It may not be in your job description,
right,
but the more you say yes to those types of projects, you're going to start to kind of work up the ladder in your boss's head as that's someone who's dependable, right? So it's not so much about I signed on for responsibility A versus responsibility B. It's about I'm available to be a team player. I can adapt. And when a big high net worth client calls on me and I have to go visit them for a big event, I'm there.
Yeah,
and
at times, you can use that as a competitive advantage. I remember with my guys when the days of the markets were, the screens were just bleeding red.
Sure.
So those are the days that you have to call your prospects,
right? Because
those are the days that the guys are working with aren't
hiding.
calling them. They're hiding because they say, hey,
they're afraid.
And look, and it's not, you're not calling to say, to place blame on anybody else. They're saying, hey, this is what happens. And you explain why you think this is going to be okay and it's going to come back. And you're not going to get a trade from that guy that day, but that's the day that you earn that person's trust and respect.
I love that. I think that's so important. You've got to basically send the message, I stand with you, is what you're saying.
Right.
I know that this is a tough time. I know that it's not exactly what we planned for, but I'm here by your side. I'm your partner. We're going to figure out how to navigate through these troubled waters. And, that's part of kind of having the skill of putting yourself out there a little bit, whether it's posting on social media, going to a networking event, hosting a podcast, something that you may not be that comfortable with, being able to be transparent and authentic. I talk about it all the time. That's what's really critical now in the future. So I love that. I love that message. I love that story, Ramon. I appreciate that. So how do you then transition into kind of local politics? Obviously, you started out at the Ridgewood level. Did you start with council or planning board, things like that?
So I went right into council. Okay. So it was on or about the end of 2015. A close friend of mine said, hey, I think you should run for village council. I think you'd be great at it. I was in the throes
You had
of
no idea
traveling
what-
all over the place, right? I was on an airplane pretty much
Right.
almost on a weekly basis. And but you know, it was also at a pivotal time in my life where my kids were getting, you know, when the kids are sort of at a tight grouping, they have similar interests,
Yep.
and everybody goes to the same place.
Yep.
You know, you pack the car up and you go
Soccer
somewhere.
fields, yep.
Once they get a little bit older, those interests start to vary a lot more, and
Sure.
you find yourself a lot more spread out. So I had to make a decision of whether or not, you know, I could be on the airplane on a weekly basis and travel. And it was also at a time when I was really reflecting back on life, and not to get
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
philosophical, but it was I felt that the calling to do a lot more service to
Gotcha.
others than just for myself, and that includes service to family and
Right.
friends, but service to community. So I was asked about if I would consider joining the council. I went to a public meeting, and I have to tell you what I saw that day, and I don't think that there's ever been any other meeting. It was almost like it happened because that was what was going to motivate me to join. And it was neighbor versus neighbor. It was,
Right.
you know, everybody was yelling at each other, yelling at the council, and it was a very contentious time in
Yeah,
Ridgewood. And I
yeah.
felt that, look, I think I'm hearing a lot of different arguments, maybe two large arguments, but the answer is somewhere in between.
Sure.
Because if we just, you know, choose to disagree and not move forward with anything,
Right. Nobody
nobody
right,
gains.
Right.
I mean, it's a zero-sum game.
So trying to find compromises and how to
find a
work together.
compromise. And it was a very difficult time. I mean, the village at the time was involved in many different types of lawsuits, you know,
Right.
being sued by different
Developers
developers, and it was a crazy time. I mean, the docket was full at the time for the village of Ridgewood, and that's what motivated me
crazy.
to
Yeah.
come in, to
Well,
be the
personal
voice of reason.
look, service is important. I mean, this is something that I'm going through too. I mean, that's why I joined the board of the Jewish Home. I love this idea. I always say now on the show, the more you give, the more you get, right? Because I feel
Absolutely.
it comes back in kind of throves, and that's why, you know, give Gary Vaynerchuk, your buddy, he wrote a book.
Yeah.
What was it? You know, like I don't know, punch, 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 jab, or something like
Jab,
that.
jab, jab, right hook.
Yeah. So my book would be, you know, give, get, like something like
Yeah.
that, because the concept is, if you want to really be a true giver, you have to give without expecting anything in return. But the secret to that is you actually get a lot more in return in the future, because the good vibes of the world come together and people recognize you as an authentic giver, right? And people want to, you know, transact with someone like that because they trust you.
Yeah, I think it was John Bunyan who said, "You have not truly served until you've given to someone that can never repay you."
Exactly. Perfect. I love
Yeah.
it. I love that. I appreciate that. And now everyone has their different choices of how they serve and give. Some people would go to a city council meeting and go, okay, that's not for me.
Right.
If you've never been to one of these local meetings, I encourage you, go to your town meeting. They're usually, you know, twice a month. And then there's planning board sessions. And, you know, speak up. You know, if you have a concern, you know, you need to let them know and share it. That's why Ramon is here and different people are here. You know, they take those roles, but just remember, like, be respectful. These people live in your town. They're not paid. They're volunteer positions to do that. They care. Their kids play soccer with your kids or softball,
Right.
you know, so be professional. If you have, you know, criticism, handle it, you know, the appropriate channels, the appropriate way. But if you have something to say, it's important that your voice gets heard. And by the way, Dougie, if anybody has something to say during our show,
You read my mind.
they could put a comment right on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or they can email us, right? getupwithgarret@gmail.com. We can answer questions, comments, concerns live right here. As long as they're appropriate, we'll share them.
Oh yeah, we'll filter. But
we
yes,
will.
put it in the comments section, and we can pull it up live with you today. We did have a little bit of a hiccup before.
Okay.
The whole system of sharing the pictures and the videos crashed.
Oh my goodness.
But I think I hacked it. So if you want to talk about some of the other stuff,
the only thing
what
did we lose?
The only thing we might lost Chris Rock. But
Oh
we
my
could talk
God.
about
We'll
it.
talk about it.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
But we're back online a
Well,
little bit.
I'll keep talking, and then you show me when the sneakers are up. So I
You
can
want
show.
the sneakers first thing you want?
If you got the sneakers, let's see.
There's the
There
sneakers.
they are. All right, Dougie
Wow.
for the win. What do we think about the sneakers, Ramon? Do you like them?
Do they come in a size 14?
Great. Size 14. Nice.
Oh my God, it's the big Hulk Hogan boot to the face, right? See, Ramon and I are old wrestling buddies. I mean, we love wrestling,
Yeah.
and you know, just remember,
WWF, not E.
yes, we may get sued by saying that. By the sorry to our friends at the World Wildlife Federation. That was what it was called. I mean, what do you want from us? That's what they called it. So those are I think I want to call them Marina Blue, I think was the name,
Yeah,
fancy name, and adding to the collection. And so hopefully we'll see
I like them.
see me dropping these soon,
I
right?
like them.
Perfect for the spring. All right, get rid of those.
Those are
All right,
great.
they're gone.
Ramon, so let's talk for a minute about kind of Ridgewood in general, Bergen County in general, the changes that are going on. We're starting to see more developers like me and other companies, other family businesses push for more kind of multifamily apartments, downtown, walkability, outside lifestyle. What are your thoughts on that? Kind of what transitioned in Ridgewood? Where how are you involved in that, and where's it going now? I guess you can kind of tie in a little bit the response to COVID with that as well.
Yeah, and I think, look, there's always in every community you're going to have the biggest challenge is going to be really between those who want to preserve tradition and those who want to be more progressive,
Okay.
right? And that's sort of what I walked into into Ridgewood. So you can't just encase your community in a glass box, but you also can't build up the next metropolis. The answer is somewhere in between, right? So you need to move forward. You need to do so responsibly and in a way that makes sense for the community. And look, there's a lot of time and effort that's spent on proper planning,
Sure. Different
redevelopment
studies,
plans, studies,
yeah.
and so on.
It's expensive too.
It's very
Yeah.
expensive, and but you know what's also scary for people about change is is that fear of the unknown.
Yes.
What's going to happen? And I know that when the whole debate was happening about the multifamily developments in Ridgewood, that it was somehow going to be this terrible thing for the community and all the traffic that was going to bring and so on. And I think part of that is, again, in thinking sort of, traditionally, and I would try to say to people, look, what's going to bring someone who wants to live in a central business district,
Right.
it's not the same reasons that brought you here. Someone, who's moving into near, the train lines,
Sure.
isn't going to come in with 3 cars
Right.
to a household.
Or 4 kids in a
Or
one
4
bedroom.
kids in a 1 bedroom. It's not going to happen. So it's really about the convenience. It's really about,
Sure.
it's a different type of lifestyle. It's a different type of consumer, right? And I think generationally, when you think of millennials, I think they bring a whole new set of opportunities for communities, not just for developers, but for communities. And what it has created now that all 4 projects are complete,
Right.
it's created a lot more foot traffic in town. I drive by one of the largest projects in town, and I have yet to slow down or stop because someone is
Right.
pulling in and out of the place.
So
Hasn't happened.
what are the initial challenges that come from the kind of that group of people that don't want the change? I usually hear traffic. I hear schools being overflowing, and that's going to cause more tax money. And then is there a third, like maybe the change of character, kind of the look?
I think it's all 3.
It's all 3.
Absolutely,
Those
yeah.
are like the 3 big ones.
Absolutely. So again, the traffic thing hasn't materialized.
Well, traffic I feel is easy because when you live in an apartment, right? You have 100 people live in an apartment. Actually, some of the ones that Ridgewood built, I think were maybe more like 48, 50, 60. I think the biggest one was
98.
98. So
Yeah.
nothing is like 300 units,
No,
first of
no.
all. Everything is under 100 right now. So let's say you have, just for ballpark, 100 people, right? Part of that group is going to walk to the train in the morning, right? So that's not traffic.
Right.
Part of that group is retired and isn't leaving their house till maybe 10 o'clock, right? Kind of, or 11 o'clock post rush hour. Part of that group is, taking a bicycle. Part of that group is working from home. So it's not like when a store opens and they're open from, only 12 to 4 with limited hours on Saturday, you're going to get jammed during that time. Or like a grocery store, right? In the morning, there's certain times, 5 o'clock, let's say it's Whole Foods, you're picking up expensive dinner. If you're going to Whole Foods, 5, 6 o'clock, it's going to be really busy, right? Lots of cars in and out.
Right.
In an apartment, it's spread out evenly over the whole day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's funny because you mentioned, retired folks. I started seeing some of my friends who are older adults in town walking around town. I said, hey,
Right.
Is this the routine that you got into with COVID? Is this a health thing? Are you
Yeah.
exercising much? No, we sold our house.
Yep.
And we moved into the apartments. And now we find that we really enjoy walking around the downtown.
Absolutely.
So it's created more foot traffic. It's changed the conversation from a real estate perspective in terms of, and what will eventually drive, I think, the tenant mix in town. Because a lot of businesses now are looking at Ridgewood as being more attractive because of the proximity now of these residents within the central business district.
I think there's a number of different groups of people that are coming to these apartments. I think you've got your longtime, really wealthy Ridgewood homeowners that want to sell their house and downsize. and they want just a beautiful, beautiful apartment that they've never had before in this area. Instead of kind of the older style apartment, this is like really luxury condo quality, very similar to what I'm building at the Hedges, right? The nicer kitchen, all the amenities, the bells and whistles. And frankly, they could probably pay whatever they want to pay because they're selling a house, right? And they probably need to store their cars somewhere else because they're not going to have enough parking. So you got that group. Then you've got kind of this, up and coming young professional, early nester group that, maybe they're looking for their first home. They're coming out of the city. They're thinking about getting pregnant in a year or two, God willing. And, but they can't afford the $1 million house or $1.5 million and interest rate, whatever it is. Right. But they're both working. They both have good jobs, so they can afford the rent. And then of course you've got like some of the divorce folks, right, that want to stay local as well, that want to be near the family, or kind of transitional apartments have always kind of been this beginning of life, end of life transition. But the big change happened, I think, around the end of the Great Recession, 2008. Apartments became more of a desire, not like a necessity. And I think that's a seismic switch that's not going back anytime soon, which is why our family is, rolling up the truck into apartments and looking to do more in other states, of course, in New Jersey. Because I feel in my heart of hearts that the younger millennial generation enjoys more to travel and wants to spend their money on experiences and not on a Rolex and a car and the fancy things that you get when you do a big deal,
or expensive house improvement
or expensive
projects.
Right? They may not want to do the beautiful built-in grill that Borst is doing for me right now in my backyard. Right? They value the quick in and out, the trip, the experience, right?
And the space, the necessity for space. I mean, if when I moved into my first home, I had boxes of DVDs and CDs and VHS tapes.
It's all becoming digital.
For
thumb drive,
it's
right?
right in here.
It's in your phone.
It's in your phone.
It's in your phone.
Your whole photo gallery, your videos, everything. So that's also changed. And it's also, we get a lot of residents who are living closer to New York City, if not in New York City, and maybe they're not ready to commit to an hour commute. So they want to try it out and be in a place where they're not fully committed yet. And once they realize that they like the downtown, there's a place where they want to live, then they'll sit,
I call this the urbanization of the suburbs a little bit. And some people that may scare some, but there's some really nice amenities. Being able to walk to a cafe, being able to walk to Raymond's, have breakfast, go to Kilwin's. I mean, the movie theater. Who wouldn't want these things a few minutes away? And you know what? Some people will pay up for it. And I take offense sometimes when kind of the old guard comes out and says, we don't want those people renting the apartments, right? Well, who are those people? If you could afford $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month in rent, I want that person coming every day, baby. I mean, that's crazy disposable income. Yes. And if you're going to be in an apartment, that means you're going to save money on your car bill. If you only have one car, that means how's your gas? I spent $100 on my gas. Yeah. If you're not going to have a car, and of course, we're going to do charging stations for all our Tesla friends. Also, you may not have an insurance payment on that car that you don't have. So you have more money to spend. A lot
more disposable income.
And guess what, Ramon? Where are you spending it? Yeah. Locally, because you have a bike or your 2 feet. So let's talk a little bit about the outdoor restaurants and stuff. What was that like during COVID? How did you pivot? Because I think you were at the helm. You were the mayor at that time, right?
Yes. So when COVID hit, I tell you that there was no playbook on how for a community to respond to a pandemic. And hopefully now it's being written, because at the time it definitely was not. I remember being in the car when that first weekend, we early March, and we were in the car, and I was on the phone with some of the folks from the municipality, trying to figure out how we're going to get the communication. For me, that was the most important thing.
Right, communicating.
How do we communicate? Because a pandemic and everything that was happening, and nobody knew what was going on. That was going to stir a lot of fear in people, and the more fearful we became, the more anxiety. I think it was just going to be a lot more stressful.
Building on top, yeah,
so absolutely. So for me, the communication was very important. I remember being in the car trying to figure out. Well, listen, we have some people who subscribe to our text messages, right? People who go on our website, but there was this huge gap. The older adults, right? Who wouldn't maybe even have access to an email account or text messages. How do we get the information to them? And I remember my wife in the car said, hey, how about, they watch the public access channel. Why don't we put a PowerPoint presentation with slides with information on there?
Great idea.
And we all looked at each other and said, okay, yeah, simple. That's great.
Do it.
but it was on the fly. It was
Right.
very, and I remember that weekend being on the phone with the Office of Emergency Management and declaring
Sure.
a local state of emergency.
Wow.
And that one it
That's a
really
big deal,
yeah,
right?
sank in and said,
That's,
wow, this is really, this is now real.
yeah, it got real.
And when the COVID numbers started coming in, I still remember. I mean, I was the first one to really get a look when the numbers started coming in. Then it was okay. Well, which school district was this person living in? Well, we can't tell you these things.
Right.
We can only tell you
Right.
the age and the gender. And then when the first fatality happened, I never
Oh,
forget. And it was not too far from where I lived, and it really was. I mean, there was this surreal kind of aspect to it because these things were happening. None of this had ever happened before. We never had to
sure.
track these numbers and report this kind of stuff. So when the community was shutting down because of it, our downtown is I call it the crown jewel of Bergen County.
Yeah.
It is it is a draw. I mean, 80% of the folks who go to restaurants in Ridgewood don't live in town.
Of course, come from all over. Yeah.
And to walk around town and it was just a ghost town.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was really scary. So when it came time. And by the way, the community came together. It was the only time in my tenure that I never got pushback on anything
Right.
because I think people were I think we were so unified in
Yeah.
the concern and fear and empathy for everyone.
Sure.
And but the communication piece was to me so crucial, and it had to be regular and it had to be constant, it had to
Right.
be rhythmic,
Constant. Yeah.
and even at the expense of maybe even over communicating.
Sure.
Because I never communicated that much prior to that.
Absolutely.
And I'm proud to say that kept everybody very
That was
calm.
good.
I think people understood what was going on, the reality of the situation.
Sure.
There was no sensationalization. It wasn't sensationalized. But then we had to think about when the restrictions started to be
Right.
lifted, how do we reopen?
Right. What's the appropriate?
So again, one of the challenges as an elected official is you're put in a position where you can make those decisions. But just because you're in that position doesn't mean that you have the knowledge and
Sure.
experience to make those decisions.
And you don't know that downstream what else it
You
affects.
don't know. So
right?
what do? You pull together a group of the smartest people in the relevant fields. So I
Right.
pulled in, someone who's a developer in town,
Sure.
very knowledgeable
Gotcha.
in real estate, a real estate broker on the commercial and residential side, a retailer, a restaurateur.
Right.
And we put together this cross section of the
Okay.
Ridgewood community, right,
Right.
from the business standpoint, because we knew that the Ridgewood downtown that closed on March, the weekend of March 12, 15, was not going to be the same downtown that was going to reopen.
Right.
So what were the things that we needed to make sure that we can do to help businesses to be able to thrive and succeed? And what was clear was we needed to give them more outdoor space.
Yep.
Because they had lost significant amount of indoor space. And we had always talked about closing downtown Ridgewood.
Sure.
And, but you know what? That can never be done.
Very
It's
tough
too
with
hard.
emergency,
It's tough.
right.
How can you do that? So it wasn't about can we do it? It's
Right.
how are we going to do it? That
Right.
was a question that we posed to village officials, including the village manager, the police, fire.
Right.
How are we going to be able to close the downtown on the weekends to create this outdoor kind of pedestrian mall, as we called it? So there are a lot of things to consider, and I'm very fortunate to have been advised, in the think tank that I
Yeah.
created,
Exactly.
and it was a booming success. I mean, we had some businesses who said that that was their best that summer that we reopened,
Right.
and they had
that summer.
tables outside with merchandise.
Right.
We put the tables on the street in the area
Incredible.
that was closed off.
Yep.
We kept the sidewalks for walking, and some merchants saying that was the best summer that they ever had,
Incredible.
bringing the merchandise out to the street. But as I say, necessity is the mother of all invention. We needed to reinvent
You got
the
to.
way that we were going to do business. So the things that seem so difficult to do and impossible to do, we figured out. We figured out how to circumnavigate the buses around the
Right.
downtown. We figured out, and it was great.
They weren't. It's funny, Doug. You remember Rick from Murdoch's talked about, if you want to, come out with clean your house in 30 days, it'll take you 30 days. But if you want to do it in 30 minutes, it'll take you 30 minutes. So
Yeah.
you didn't have a choice. I mean, figuring out the emergency management and the buses and the cops and the fire department, all that stuff. You figured out the routes, right? And you just did it,
Yeah.
right? And kind of think about it less. Just start doing it. But I love the fact that you put together the think tank. I remember seeing photos of the restaurants outside, and that was just a great feeling of community. So now, what's the transition now for the future? Because you've got these restaurateurs who are saying, "Hey, that was great financially for my pocketbook. I want to do that again." and now the weather's going to start getting warmer. We've had a few cold weeks here in Bergen County and northern New Jersey, but I think it will get warmer. And, I happen to be a big fan of kind of the outdoor seating. I mean, Murdoch's has that big outdoor storage we talked about in Denver, but I think the outdoor seating kind of sets up this kind of al fresco cafe, this kind of European feel, and everyone's out enjoying themselves. And what do you do when you enjoy yourself? You spend more money because you're relaxed and you're happy, right? And those monies trickles down to the taxes in the local municipalities. So what are your thoughts on how do you, and I know you're not, obviously an elected official any further for Ridgewood, you're representing Bergen County now. But what do you think is a good plan to kind of transition so there's still some sort of that available to owners?
Yeah, and I think this summer in particular is going to be very important because it's the first summer where there are no restrictions. I think people are going to come out. I think, the price of gas where it is now, people might rethink their travel plans and where they're going to drive to.
Sure.
So we're probably going to have more staycations.
Yep.
There's certainly enough within Ridgewood to do and in the area to keep yourself entertained. But I think this summer in particular is going to be so crucial because so many people are going to want to be outside and share. I went to a political function last night, and the person who was one of the organizers said, this is the crowd that's here today is beyond the numbers that we've ever had.
Pre-COVID,
Pre-COVID, beyond pre-COVID.
I'm hearing that a lot for different
people want to get together. People want to come back out. I think as human beings, the socialization aspect of this, just being in the company of others. So I think that's going to be crucial for the businesses. I think will continue to benefit if that's the case. But for we talked about people wanting experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to go outside, to be able to walk around, it's an experience.
So it's healthy.
It's healthy.
Fresh air. I mean,
absolutely.
But
it creates foot traffic as well.
I think people forgot to talk about, there was so much focus on kind of the bad numbers with COVID and the health part. But there were a lot of people, shout out to my friend Juan, who's a personal trainer, who kept talking about how about the people that are outside exercising, right? Taking care of yourself. Like, this is an incredible wake-up call to people that were overweight, that were not healthy, because and I don't have the numbers, I'm not a scientist or a doctor, but for sure, people who were in better health had a better chance of beating this thing.
Right. Absolutely.
There's
some silver linings. I think, the whole food insecurity thing, that we realized just how bad the problem was. We don't think of it as being a problem in Bergen County because of the zip codes.
Yep.
But there are a lot of people who suffer in silence and, who don't have access to nutritious meals. And I think that was one of the biggest things.
Wake-up call,
a big wake-up call for us. So a lot of good things have come out of this. Some very important lessons, I think, that have been learned.
And I was blown away by what they did. It was Newbridge, the medical center, right? Where they had, I don't know what they were called, these cohorts, these tremendous tents that were built where they had the vaccines, et cetera. I mean, a lot of people kind of throw shade at, county officials or local town officials. Like, no one's ever happy with things, right?
Of course.
But let me publicly say, I was just blown away by what the team put together. I mean, when I walked in there, I've never felt so much love and just comfort and confidence that, we are in this together and we're going to be healthy and we're going to get through this. So, my hat's off to you and your team that was involved in that project.
And to think of what Bergen Newbridge was prior, it's the county runs it now. We have Deb Visconti as the CEO. She's tremendous. But the county executive is personally very, very invested in this property. This is one of his most important priorities. And the work that was done there was absolutely tremendous. I mean, that's where we went for our vaccinations. That's where we went for testing.
Yep.
The experience that people would have when they went, the feedback that they came back to us was tremendous. They did an unbelievable job and continue to. We continue to make investments in
because you don't know what you don't know what you're going to walk into with something like that. You're thinking like Army barracks, like this is really new to everybody, right?
But also, it was not just bringing people to Bergen Newbridge, it was Bergen Newbridge coming to people. So they were doing these remote testing.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
We were doing it. We set one up in Ridgewood one day, and it was probably the hottest day in June that I can remember.
Yeah.
And the whole staff, it was both Bergen Newbridge staff and county employees. We operated this COVID testing center all day under 90+ degree.
Oh my God.
It was
your grandparents talk about, I waited in line for apples and food during the Great Depression, right? You've heard these stories and you kind of picture what this looks like. And then, we're going to tell our grandkids about what we went through. And hopefully this is never going to happen again. That playbook everybody just wrote can sit on the shelf nice and dusty and never be touched. But it's just so incredible to walk into something like that. Now Ridgewood, I forgot to give Dougie some of the photos, but we ended up buying a building in Ridgewood during COVID. We sold an industrial building in Hawthorne, and we did what's called a 1031 transaction. Dougie, right? You know about this?
Yeah.
Do you
I
remember?
like it.
Do you remember?
I remember.
What's the?
You're
Let's
taking
see.
you're taking the profits from one property and directly putting it to a future property, and it saves you some tax
Right.
dollars.
We defer our
Defer
taxes,
taxes,
right?
Yes, yes.
Right. You're not off the hook completely, but it's a totally legal
Yeah.
in the tax code that they encourage you to invest in property.
Absolutely.
And so we bought the former Gap building in downtown Ridgewood. I think it's 235 East Ridgewood Avenue. I used to buy my khakis there, okay, when I was growing up. And the Gap had, just so everyone's not mad at me, I didn't close the Gap. I'm not the big bad landlord. They've been closing stores throughout the country, and they closed this store that summer. And then we purchased the building, did a full renovation of the building. I think it came out beautiful, the new facade. I hope people in Ridgewood think it's nice. And the Blue Foundry Bank opened up. And
I have to say that the Blue Foundry design was great. It was done by DMR Architects. They did a
Really?
great- oh yeah.
You walked right into that one. Are you kidding me? I didn't even remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job. I mean, that is just very kind of chic and urban and kind of like, I think of the New York City meatpacking district, right?
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
I was talking to a developer yesterday. We're looking at the design of the branches. He's like, I want my man cave to look like this. This is this is a great looking space. Doesn't look like a bank.
Yeah, you know what, Dougie? You could probably, can you bring up bedroom.com?
Is
Is that down also?
That's the thing that's down.
Okay, next time. we'll show you.
So like
I
I can bring up a couple pictures.
Okay,
I have
cool.
to hack it. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not me.
no,
It's
hey,
not me.
hey.
It's them.
If you have a comment box, just comment below. Make sure to give me a thumbs up also and subscribe. So that's exciting. And then we're going to start work on the Salons by JC. We're going to do Salons by JC in downtown Ridgewood. So we'll have the opportunity for, I forget, maybe 30 different professionals to own their own business. And it's going to be really cool. I'm not ready to kind of show all the surprises because we're kind of in architecture right now, but it's going to be something special and unique. We're going to try to use some existing materials that are there and kind of bring in a little bit of that look from the bank as well, kind of that meatpacking, industrial, exposed brick a little bit. So I think it'll be a really exciting improvement to the downtown and kind of stay on this go of, people owning their own business, being entrepreneurs, which is what we talk about here so often on the show. So stay tuned to follow kind of the development of that for the end of the year. That'll take some time. Doug, are you able to show the video of the hedges, or is that gone?
So I hacked that. Yeah, let's
you
go.
got that hacked?
Go. I got it hacked, baby.
Gotcha. So if you've been following on the show the past few months, you know that our family has been on this 13-year journey to complete a kind of once in a lifetime, what I would say kind of wealth generation, family generational history kind of project. It's 118 luxury rental apartments that, in my opinion, will rival anything you've seen in Bergen County, even though Hawthorne's in Passaic County. Condo quality amenities, just beautiful, beautiful high-end kitchens and bathrooms. And we hope to have this project finished in the fall. And it also has a great self-storage building, as well as a new retail building with Planet Fitness and a couple other retailers. So if you've been following along, you've seen the progress photos in the drone video, which Dougie's going to show you now.
So I'm ready to show it, but they
What
might
happened?
not hear us. So I'm letting you
That's
finish.
okay.
So once you're ready, I'll play
That's
it. And they're
okay.
going to only see that. They
That's
won't hear
okay.
us. All right, here we go.
They've heard enough of me.
Like if you were opposed to these things, you tell me you'd rather see what was there before.
And we're back.
We're back.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that video without my voice. That was a good break. Maybe you went to the bathroom like I did during my bar mitzvah. I had to take a break. So Ramon had a great question. He was curious what was there before we built this project at the Hedges. It was a chemical plant owned. It was called Calgon, I think. Merck had bought this company Calgon many, many decades ago. And that was demoed and it sat for 20, 30 years, nothing. And I mean, all the dirt came out.
Probably.
Yeah. And, Ramon had a great point of, if you're going to complain about what the project is in terms of new traffic or new look or taxes, whatever, is it your desire to go back and have a chemical plant or something across the street from you, and that's great. You always have to think about, well, if it's not this, what else is it? And one of the other comebacks I always like is someone will say to me, why don't you build a public park? And a developer once said to me, he goes, Garrett, absolutely. We will build 1 square feet or whatever of a public park to match the same one that they do in their backyard of their home, which I think is great because it kind of says to you, you know what, this is there are property rights in this country. Like I do own this property and obviously we were going to work within zoning, et cetera. But to come at me so aggressive and say that I should just give that back to the town, there's a price paid for that. It has to have a return on your investment. And, when we can create green spaces that are inviting to the community, like the Planet Fitness, the other retailers, self-storage, that's all open to the community. Anyway, the project's looking great. We're thrilled. The steel is up for the Planet Fitness. You had another question about the project that I forgot. I told you to wait.
How large was the property?
Oh, thank you. Perfect. So this one was about 8 acres, but only 6 3/4 were usable because we have a lot of wetlands. Okay. So you've got to delineate the wetlands. There's really strict buffers that is the New Jersey DEP. So once you deal with kind of Ridgewood's level or with Hawthorne and then Bergen County, the state is going to have an even higher level with the wetlands provisions. So yeah, I mean, the site's a challenge site in all fairness. I mean, it kind of gets narrow as you go to the back. It's more like a triangle. So as you get closer to the Passaic River there, and then there's certain areas that we don't believe flood because we've done studies out there, but yet are certainly in what the state would say as a flood zone or a flood plain, and so you've got to have structure certain distance away. So that's more challenging to the developer as well. We're working with a much smaller footprint, but we paid for the whole thing.
And so was there a cleanup on your end of the site? Because that's the other benefit too. You come in, you cleaned up a dirty site.
Yes. Yeah, it was a brownfield turnaround. So
that's a benefit to the community.
We didn't personally do it, but Merck Pharmaceutical, the multi-billion-dollar company, they spent, hold on to your chair, $60 million. So this is a complete cleanup. Like, in fact, they went above and beyond, and that we had to put more rock in because they just went and got the fanciest soil that could be out there, and we said, look, we want to support this more for the structure.
I got a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Sorry to cut you off.
No.
Because this is like in that zone of where you're at right now.
Let's do it.
So I'm in the beginning season of the beginning stages of Yellowstone. Okay. So
me too.
That. All right. So I'm in season 2, episode 1, or 2.
I'm
right?
in season 1. Okay.
Okay. Well, I won't spoil anything, okay. But in the beginning of season 2, she's talking about how they're going to buy up all this land and the government's going to help and reimburse them because they want it to be like, a sacred. They don't want anyone to build on it. Right. Sure. So when you're cleaning up something like that, you're helping the environment and you're helping that area. Do you think there's incentives and there's tax cuts and there's whatever to help that huge, costly project be more manageable?
Wow, great question. I'm going to defer that to Ramon because he's probably heard that question more formally. I'm curious.
Yeah, so basically, just like in the Yellowstone, maybe Yellowstone's, not telling us the truth, but they're buying property and the government's giving them money to help them buy the property and give them tax breaks. And it's like whatever, code C3, whatever. Yeah. So if you're purchasing this chemical plant, cleaning it out and making it better in some way, shape, to fix it, are there incentives to do that? Are there incentives is there money, cash back, or whatever?
Yeah, at the federal level, the programs vary both in scope and in regions, right? Mm-hmm. There's certain areas that may be affected by existing conditions more than others. But when you think about also, think about clean water. The way that clean water works, the earth is a huge filter at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And the water that filters through clean soil and gets down to your reservoirs down to your to the underground streams, that water is really as good as what's on top. So if you're
Yeah.
filtering through a lot of chemicals, guess what? When it gets down below, there's a chances that it's going to be, contaminated waters and it get into the stream.
Yeah.
So it's not just what happens on that site; it's what happens downstream.
Sure.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of concerns. Obviously, before any of these properties can be occupied, you have to do a cleanup, or if you're not going to be developed for residences, you have to encapsulate if you're going to do
Right.
any other parking structures or something like that. But there are programs. There
Yeah.
isn't any particular program. It's
Mhm.
sort of kind of piecemeal.
Yeah.
I
according
think
to
the
where it's
short
at.
I think the short answer is yes. There are incentives. Do they all fit into the same box? No.
No.
Every state's going to be different. Every
Yeah.
town's going to be different.
Right.
But there are definitely stories of certain lots that are marked like in need of redevelopment, and there may be some type of auction or whatever it is, and the winning developer is going to be committing X amount of money. In exchange, they're going to be getting a better density, or they're
Yeah.
going to be getting a tax pilot, some type of program.
Right.
And that's all legal,
Yeah.
above board, all
Yeah.
approved by that town or whatever it is. Yeah.
Just like when you sell a property and you promise to use that money to invest into a new property, make that better. That's kind of like where I was going with it. Like,
Yeah,
what was that
well-
called again with the
well,
beginning of the show? we were
The new
talking?
thing is the opportunity zones. Yeah,
Opportunity
opportunity
zones.
zones is relatively new, and basically they went around, I think, to all the governors or maybe even all the mayors. You would know, and they had to earmark kind of areas that they thought were areas of redevelopment that really needed improvement. And so with those, and I'm not an expert on it because I haven't done it, but it has to do with it's like a 1031 supercharged based on turbo, my
Right.
turbo, and basically the dollars that you spend in that area, you've got much better tax breaks on. And again, you got to follow this very, very closely. And there's companies that just do this right now, and especially in New
Mhm.
Jersey. Now it's funny, like in Winston-Salem, where I do a lot of business, most of the whole downtown is in that zone. Okay. Well, there are certain parts that definitely need it. And then there's other parts where you would have just built the beautiful brand new luxury project no matter what.
Right.
And you kind of scratch your head and go, huh, right? But it's there. What do you want from me? I mean, if it's there, I'm going to use the credits. That's what's there. Don't blame me for that. So that's an interesting idea. And look, anytime you're going to get involved in a development, I take the approach, I don't want to be anywhere I'm not welcome. So, to spend 10 years fighting and millions of dollars, I mean, I'm going to have no hair, Ramon, right?
Right.
I'm already losing my hair. So, I'd like to try to be more transparent, be upfront. I think the big improvement that towns could make, in my opinion, would be being more welcome for kind of these informal sit downs very early and saying, look, we're going to have a kind of a Zoom or an in-person, whatever it is, and we're going to give you the ability. And I don't know if the right term, I don't know if it fills into like Oprah and all that stuff, or it's off the record or whatever you want to call it. But the idea that I can present something to the town and within like a week or two get comments from people, and I'm not bound to this. It's just kind of a draft, what I don't know, we going to call planning, session, work session. So you quickly know, am I in the right ballpark here? Because if I need to get 100 apartments for the numbers to work on the spreadsheet, and it can only get 50, I don't think we're going to fight, and that's just not worth my time and money.
Right.
I'd rather put that somewhere in another town where, like, Hackensack is going, and you guys are doing incredible work at Hackensack DMR.
Yeah. DMR, we've been there for 12 years as planners. We've done all the designations. We did the original area.
Right.
in
Francis
need of
was, I remember
rehabilitation.
being very involved in that.
Fran
Absolutely.
Reiner has been doing a tremendous job there, and and think about the transformation that has happened.
Incredible.
In Hackensack. I mean, people had
That's
given
what
up
I
in
love.
Hackensack at that time.
Absolutely. And
I
so
see it.
that's an area where they said, hey, we will give you better density than you're getting in Ridgewood or somewhere else. Come here, bring your development here, right? So I think developers, would really love the ability. I'll give you an example. In Greensboro, we're looking at something now where the lawyer told me that they've got this little work session, and he says, we're going to have comments from every division in 2 weeks. I mean, that's going to save so
Well,
much time and money, because I don't want to climb up that tree, Ramon, if there's not a, like, I don't want to give up. We spent 13 years in the hedges and we never gave up. We may have been too stupid to not give up at some point, but we never gave up. But going forward, I got to be in the ballpark. Does that seems fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Got it. I want to talk about one more thing. We always talk about like sports betting and the Final
Yeah.
Four. And I don't know, are you into college basketball at all?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's been exciting.
Has
exciting
it
fun.
been
Oh,
great?
Man, this has been tremendous.
I'm sorry about everyone. St. Pete's.
St.
I'm
Pete's.
sorry. It was fun. It
The
was
emotional
really
favorite,
fun.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the whole country's like pushing for the peacocks, right? And it was National Peacock Day, which is some bullshit thing someone made up on Instagram. 'Cause every day it's National Skunk Day. I mean, come on. But it was fun to watch the Final Four. UMass is not typically in the Final Four since Marcus Camby way back. But I love North Carolina. Being that we do so much business, I really wanted to go to school there at first when I was younger. So I'm always rooting for the Tar Heels, UNC. And so we've always talked about like FanDuel, DraftKings, etc. I wanted to introduce you guys to a new company out there. I want to preface it by saying you should always be making decisions that are smart and based on kind of what you can afford. Never bet over your head. Never borrow money to make bets. Don't even listen to the advice that we make. Make your own. Make your own advice. Have fun. Look at it like a price of dinner or a Broadway show. So be responsible. But there's another company that I was introduced to called PointsBet, and I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's really cool, really innovative, and they actually have people who are kind of like casino hosts that will stay in touch with you. If you have any problems, any issues, you can reach out to them. And they obviously, if you grow and become someone who's involved a lot doing that, they perhaps could take you to dinner and things like that. Like in Vegas, they have the hosts, things like that. So we have a special code, a link that we're going to put down in the notes. If you click that link and sign up for PointsBet, they will match you up to $2,000 in free bets. So if you deposit up to $2,000, if you deposit $2,000, they'll give you $2,000. If you deposit $1,000, they'll give you $1,000. So this is like real free bets. And I just want to show you what could happen with your free bet.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's let it rip.
It's a little small.
Okay.
A little small, but it's
Dougie.
up there. Hey, I'm doing what I can today. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's very small.
That's
Dougie.
very small.
That's not, hold on. Let me see. Is that my coffee is bigger?
Yeah, your coffee is bigger than that. Yes.
Anyway, that's the $500 free bet put on UNC to make the Final Four, and it paid $1,875.
Wow.
Just saying. That was a no risk free bet. They gave me that money as a thank you, and they will give you that money as a thank you for signing up and joining. Again, bet responsibly, bet with your head, but especially if it's free money, there's no risk.
Yeah.
So
house money.
Just telling you that's the house money. So who do you think coming up next weekend? We've got UNC and Duke. We've got Coach K's final game. So you got the interconference ACC rivals. They're literally 9 miles away down Tobacco Road in North Carolina, where we do a lot of business. And then, of course, the other game is Villanova versus Kansas, which they both have been two pretty strong teams and great coaching. Let's go to the North Carolina game. Dougie,
what do you want me to go first?
Any comment here?
So, look, I respect that you like North Carolina, but I would like to see the storybook ending with Duke. I would have, if it was Duke against St. Peter's, which, hats off to them. Their defense was impeccable. They just couldn't put the ball in the hoop. Like they if they just could, score some buckets, that we might have a Duke Peacocks game. But I would like to see the storybook ending. I think Coach K is a good guy. I read his book. It's great. He's a great dude. Very inspirational.
All right, so you're thinking Duke for the win.
Yeah,
Ramon, what about you?
Yeah, I think Duke is going to be motivated to come out. But I just feel like North Carolina is just building, getting stronger.
Yeah.
They have a lot of momentum. I think they're going to be very tough to beat. I have to go with North Carolina.
All right, so I'm gonna be with the
commissioner
here.
Are we making bets here?
If you're making a bet, please use the link below, because don't make a bet. I mean, they're going to give you free money. You might as well look, anytime you can use other people's money, that seems to make sense to me. And then the other game, Kansas, I have to ask a question. My good buddy growing up, Andrew Skura, he went to Villanova. He's big Villanova. I don't know. One of their players got really hurt. And I know they did an x-ray and it was negative, but they were going to do an MRI on Monday. I did not hear the results. So one of their top stars may not be playing. So I'm thinking, I hate to go against my buddy. I'm thinking Kansas in this game against Villanova. They're just big. My God, they're big and strong. And I think that Bill Self's an incredible coach, just been consistent over 20 years. What are your thoughts? Any thoughts, Dougie?
I'll agree with you. I wasn't really paying attention to that side of the bracket. I've been following our Peacocks, but
fine.
Yeah, I think entering into the Final Four, down one of your biggest stars, that's a big handicap. I think that's very difficult for a team to overcome that far into the.
I think it's emotionally exhausting too. Like all week, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Is he going to play? Is he not going to play?
So and,
So
and
can-
how do you practice for that? How do you incorporate
right, the
him in
schemes.
or out? So
It's distracting.
yeah, I think counts as well.
So now, if it becomes a North Carolina versus Kansas final,
Yeah.
then you got the Roy Williams game, right? Roy Williams won 2 titles at North Carolina. I think he won 1 title at Kansas. I'm not sure. And I mean, that will just be a great storybook. Or you got the Coach K
Yeah.
storybook, right? I
Yep.
mean, going out as a winner. Remember Michael Strahan won the Super Bowl, retired. Ray Lewis, I think. A couple other guys have done it, done it right. Cool. Dougie, can we go to the lightning round?
Absolutely.
Do we have our
Yes,
lightning
we-
round
we
music?
got lightning round
Or do I need to
capabilities.
bring
We have lightning round capabilities.
Connor in here to do the little tick, 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 tick. So you tell
I'm
me.
ready when you're ready.
You tell me when you're ready. Ramon, we're going to keep this nice and light, but every guest of the Get Up with Garret show has to go through the lightning round. Just kind of the first answer that comes to the top of your mind. It's a series of 4 or 5 questions that we hit everyone with. You hear the ticking? It's like Jeopardy here.
No pressure.
All right. What is a business book that you'd recommend? Actually, just a book you'd recommend for up-and-coming entrepreneurs.
Oh, Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Wow. Art of War. Haven't heard that one yet, Dougie.
Yeah.
First concert, best concert.
I would say is the same. I went to Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion, Giant Stadium.
Wow. Oh, my God. 90s, right?
Yeah.
Wow. If you wanted to go to outer space, because I know we love to travel, who do you trust? Elon Musk, Richard Branson, or Jeff Bezos?
I would go Jeff Bezos all the way.
And then what's a goal that you would want me to remind you of in a year from now? Personal goal.
Personal goal. Ooh, get more sleep.
Sleep. All right, last question. I'm changing this one up a little bit. A lot of my friends like vanity plates on their cars. Not everyone knows what that is. So I'll give you a choice. Either give me a fun vanity plate you would have, or a cool new Instagram handle. If your wife wasn't going to get mad at you.
Vanity plates. I remember from the show back in the 90s, Beverly Hills 90210,
Of course.
where Steve had on his Corvette, I ate a Ferrari.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to throw one in there. Your favorite professional wrestler, because I know we've talked wrestling before.
Oh, I'm a Hulk Hogan guy all the way.
Oh, brother.
Hulk Hogan.
Grew up in the 80s together.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Well,
Nice.
the commissioner has survived the lightning round.
Survives.
He did it. He did it.
Let's talk about the slap. Is that what was that?
You want to talk about the slap?
We can. I just can't show you it.
Yep.
But I think everyone's seen it a million times. by now.
Everyone's seen the
Please
slap.
demonstrate. That's
Connor, come
Turn
here.
down the world. What'd you think? I mean, we're obviously talking about Will Smith walking on stage at the Oscars. If you're still watching the Oscars, I mean, I fall asleep usually pretty early. And slap the shit out of Chris Rock. Basically, I was going to play the uncensored version because what I was really disgusted by was how the tone of his voice picked up after he sat back down in the seat. When he first went on the stage, I wasn't sure if it was real. I thought it was somewhat of a WWF skit, right?
Sure.
And you see Chris Rock kind of put his arms behind, which is a very kind of opening, and he leans kind of back. And I'm thinking this is going to be something funny, right? It's going to be a boys be boys funny thing. But it changed when he went and sat down, and I was really disappointed. I mean, look, the idea of chivalry and sticking up for your wife, that's a no-brainer, okay? But the fact that Chris Rock is an invited guest to the Oscars to present or make a speech or whatever he was doing, and being that he's a comedian, he kind of has a little bit of free range to make some jokes, right? And whether we can talk about whether the joke was appropriate or not, that's another conversation. But when you're in the audience, you're not invited to go up and disrupt, abuse, heckle, physically, whatever, assault a performer. And so what concerns me is the bigger picture is not about that slap. Chris Rock will be fine. I'm not worried about Chris Rock. He's not going to sue. He's not going to the hospital. The bigger question is, does this now invite younger people when they're unhappy at a Broadway show, when they're unhappy at a high school performance, when they're unhappy at a comedy show, right? You never been to a comedy show? They make fun of Jackie Mason. I mean, he's going to kill you. Everyone's getting killed. Doesn't matter. Black, white, Jewish, gay, this, that.
Especially if you sit up front.
You're getting killed.
Target.
Right? That's kind of like what you're paying for, right? So that's what concerns me is the message it's sent. And he wasn't escorted out. He was then awarded, supplanted with a a dog treat, right? Like the idea of, hey,
Right.
good for you. Here's
Right.
your treat. You know, you got the Oscar.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts were. Ramon, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, I think it was quite disgraceful. You know, it's one of those things where sometimes your ego, if you're in the wrong place, can lead you to take yourself too seriously. You know, they're both entertainers.
Right.
Will Smith now, I guess, has transitioned to more serious actor. He began with comedy.
Of course.
And I think to sit there and to stand up and look, he was laughing
Yes.
at the beginning. And I think when he realized that that Jada wasn't
She
abused,
wasn't. Right.
he decided he was going to walk up and I guess exert his dominance over Chris Rock. Chris Rock is a very diminutive figure. He's a small guy. If it was The Rock,
Right. It would
if
have been
it was
a
the
little
wrong
more.
Rock, he wouldn't have said anything. But to get up there and to slap, another human being, it was meant to be degrading. It was meant to, and the reason you notice that you mentioned that how his
Yes, the body.
demeanor changed.
Yeah.
He was puffed up after
Yes.
that. He fell. He walked off stage.
He had the beer muscles.
Puffed up beer muscles, and he sat down. And now, he was the tough guy. And I get it. You need to, maybe the need to defend and protect your family, your wife, but there are better ways to do that. We teach our kids the same thing. I said, look, it's not okay to hit someone unless you're defending yourself.
Right.
Somebody's, is threatening you physically.
Sure.
But to just hit somebody because you cannot take, and as insensitive as the joke may have been, there are better ways to handle it, especially when you're someone in the public eye. I'm sorry, whether you think it's unfair or not, I don't think it's unfair because you're making millions of dollars to be who you are. You have to hold yourself to higher standard because you do have the responsibility of having the younger generations, particularly.
It was also a big
looking
night.
up at you. It's a huge night, the biggest night.
He was the favorite.
He's the favorite.
To win I mean, it was a big night.
I think it was wrong for women. It was wrong for the entertainment industry. It was wrong for just the professionalism that you expect with someone that way, for the message to the younger generations. It was just terrible. I think it was disgraceful. There's some calls now about him, them taking away the Oscar. I think, look,
well, that has nothing to do with
what he did. Right. What he did to earn the Oscar had nothing to do with what he did that night.
Right.
So I think that's sort of out of hand. But the fact that he did, it was just, it was the most shameful moment for television. It really was.
What do you think, Dougie?
Yeah, I mean, are we canceling comedy now? We're not allowed to make jokes, and then if you don't get your way, this is the example we're showing a younger generation. So now they don't get their way. They're rioting in the streets. If their official doesn't get elected, if their favorite doesn't happen, if they don't get what they want, they're just going to go up and slap people. I mean, it's just a lot of undertone messaging that we're providing to the youth and showing them that it's okay. When we were growing up and we watched the war show, everyone acted appropriately and and did their thing. And now more and more of these things are happening, and it's showing younger people that this is the right way to act.
It's like blurring the line between roughhousing in your backyard with your buddies, and then now you're at a Ramon's becoming the commissioner, and he's got to put his hand on the Bible. Like, this was a more formal. It's totally different. Like, you've got to learn how to act in. You got to know your audience, right? No pun intended. But you've got to kind of act in the scene. And I mean, I think he snapped. And there's probably some deep-rooted, mental health and some issues that are going on in his life that have probably other things, and some of it may be related to Chris Rock or his marriage, or who knows? It's not my business, right? And he had his breaking point. The problem is you can't have your breaking point. Like, you've got to be able to keep your cool in the public, because your breaking point could put you in jail for life when you beat the shit out of someone, or you drive drunk, or you do a horrible thing and you shoot someone, God forbid, right? Like, that's not an excuse that you were pushed beyond your breaking point. The action that happened, like, because I think the joke was insensitive too, but Ricky Gervais has said a ton worse at the Golden Globes, right? And so you think about, like, the show, I love that show, Marvelous Miss Maisel, and this woman in the 50s up on stage, right, where it's an all male dominated comedy world, and she's up there making jokes. Like, if this is what happens where a guy's how do young comics feel comfortable of color, from women, that people that are different going on stage, knowing that, hey, Will Smith didn't even get, like, where was security? They didn't do anything. So I was embarrassed and disgusted.
It almost seems like Chris Rock was he was kind of looking to the left, like, what just happened here? And sometimes you're in a situation where someone gets in your face and in the heat of the moment,
Sure.
you might react. He had to make the conscious decision to get up from his chair
Yeah.
when he wasn't called to come up,
Right.
to walk up on stage and strut there and smack this guy.
Yeah. This was
Go
not.
back to his chair
Yeah.
and then think of those words that he was yelling out. I mean, there was a lot of time there for him to be able to pause and say, "This is maybe a bad idea for me to do this."
Yeah, this is very different than someone in your face. Your mama's so fat. That's not what was happening.
Mhm.
This was a kind of, you're in that room, you're all allowed to be picked on. Like, that's kind of the deal.
Mhm.
And from time to time, it goes too far. And when that happens, that person's not invited back, right?
Yeah.
The jokester.
Yeah.
So, he tried to really make it all about him. I thought it was extremely selfish, and just horrible. And I didn't like it.
That's a big point I want to.
But we are talking about it.
Yeah, well, and people say it was done for ratings and it was sketch whatever, but the fact of the matter is this was done, and we all agree it was a dumb idea by Will Smith. But the big issue I also find is there's no consequence to it.
Yeah.
So like we could do whatever we want now. We
Yeah,
can
it's a
we
problem.
can riot the streets. We can hit people. We can. I mean,
Yep.
our forefathers put a program together that said we have free speech, right?
Yep.
So we're supposed to be able to free speech. So you might not like what someone says about you, but you shouldn't be striking people. And the fact there's no consequences, like he got an award 2 seconds later, not showing. It's not a good example.
But let's talk about Chris Rock. I mean, I think the class that he showed, the poise,
Yes.
and to even come back with a little joke and make it bring some
Right,
levity
tried to.
after being assaulted on public television.
He didn't even, Dougie, give me the camera. He didn't even go like this.
Right.
It was like,
Right.
not only did it not really physically really hurt him, I mean, he's okay. He just kind of like kept his, he goes, okay. Okay. I mean, I was impressed. He kept it together. That was actually pretty impressive. I appreciate you mentioning that. So, Dougie, I hope you learned something today. A little bit
Absolutely.
behind the
Always do.
scenes,
Always do.
local knowledge of towns and counties and things like that, and the
Mhm.
opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And Ramon has his hands in a lot of different things, which is great. And if somebody wants to reach out, say hello, pick your brain about development, politics, just kind of local knowledge, can they write you an email? Would that be okay if someone
Absolutely.
reached one of
You
our?
have it up there, Doug?
Yeah, we do.
Perfect.
There he
you go.
is, Ramon at RamonHache.com. I like to call him Razor Ramon, bad guy. Rest in peace, Razor Ramon.
Oh,
he
man.
did just. He was a
a
good
big
one.
loss.
He was a good one.
Yeah.
He was a good one. All right, folks, we'll be back in 2 weeks. We can't wait to see you. Remember always to give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Reach out, send some love, and remember, the more you give, the more you get.